Welcome to the Cohesion Podcast. Before we dive in, let me tell you about Simpler, the AI-powered employee experience platform that's revolutionizing internal communications. Simpler helps you build a vibrant company culture, transform your digital workplace, and boost employee productivity. Want to see how Simpler can elevate your employee experience? Visit simpler.com/cohesion to download our free guide on creating an engaging digital workspace.
Hi everyone, my name is Miriam Connaughton. I'm the Chief People Officer at Simpler, and welcome to another episode of the Cohesion Podcast. And I'm delighted to be joined by my counterpart at Included Health, Jim O'Gorman. Welcome, Jim.
Hi Miriam, great to be here.
Thank you for taking the time. And you and I, we're going to kind of troll across a broad landscape of topics, but largely in the house of belonging and connectedness, which are topics you and I are very passionate about. They're evolving fast. We haven't solved for yet. So before we get into that, though, we like our audience to, first of all, just get to know you a little better, say a little bit about Included Health. Not everybody out there will know Included Health, and tell us a bit about the organization that you lead the people function for.
Sure, thanks. So I'm the Chief People Officer here at Included Health, and we are all about providing all-in-one personal health care for individuals, and we help employers in particular really create the right medical healthcare experience for their employees through offering virtual primary care, virtual urgent care, virtual behavioral health, and we wrap that all in with claims coordination, benefits coordination, and navigation services for particularly large employers, making sure that they really provide a better, more enhanced healthcare experience for their employees.
Very good. And just give us an idea of the scale of the workforce and maybe the mix of the worker types that you have in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. We're, pretty evenly divided, a third, a third, a third. First, across our clinical population. So we have a large clinical population providing the care services that we need to provide to our members, as well as a large hourly employee for claims coordination, member advocacy, and they're all dispersed across the United States, and a very much strong tech, engineering, data science footprint as we bring in new technology to help navigate the complexities of healthcare. So a very broad workforce, both in engineering, clinical, and hourly claims coordination.
Wow, a lot of diversity in a lot of perspectives. I'm sure we'll get into that more. So this is a learning and kind of a community of listeners, if you like, but we like to keep it light too. So we like to get to know our guests a little bit better, just on a personal human level. So my first question for you as we just kind of dive into things is, what is the last thing you binge watched? Are you a binge watcher?
I'm a binge watcher. Yeah, The Handmaid's Tale, the final season of The Handmaid's Tale. I'm a former hooligan, was at Hulu many years, and sad to see that season end, but really one of my favorite shows.
I still haven't watched it. I read the book years and years ago when Margaret Atwood first wrote it, but it's like on my long list of things eventually I will get around to watching.
If you love the book, you have to watch the series. There's
I do know how it
six seasons, so please put it on your list.
Yeah, it's become a cultural icon, that series. And, kind of still keep it alive, but maybe a little bit more life lesson. What's the best piece of advice that you've been given, career or personal? Just what's the best piece of advice that's stuck with you through your life?
Oh, Kathleen Sullivan. She was my mentor in my internship back in the early 90s to learn and remember people's names and call people by their names and really develop the discipline of remembering people's names. And she taught me how to do that. And it's been such a valuable advice that I really try to work at all the time is knowing people's names and calling people by their name.
So other than an amazing memory, do you have like a mnemonic or something you use? Especially when you're in a big social gathering. I'm not good at those big social gatherings remembering names of people I'm just introduced to.
She taught me this. Kathleen, if you're listening, I haven't talked to you in so long, but when you first meet them, you mention their name 3 or 4 times in that conversation. So, oh, Miriam, nice to meet you. Oh, Miriam, that's really interesting. Oh, Miriam, I hope we can chat again. But use their name in the very first conversation, make eye contact, and you'll register their name with their face. I'm telling you, it's not perfect. It's not 100%, but it does work and help you. But use their name in the conversation when you first meet them.
3 times. Okay, so
At
I'm going to a
least three
business dinner.
times. At least three times.
At least three. Okay, I'm going to try that out at business dinner I have tomorrow night, and I'll tell you if it works.
Let me know how it goes. Let me know how it
I
goes.
will. I will. So let's dive into the discussion. Let's start like kind of bigger picture. If I were to go by the headlines, we're lonelier than ever, engagement is lower than ever, we're feeling more disconnected than ever. I mean, what are we missing in the workplace that all those kind of, doom and gloom stats are out there? What's going on? What are we missing in today's workplace?
Gosh, I wish there was a silver bullet
Me
to
too.
all of this. But I think it's really thinking with more intention and operating with more intention with how we engage with our employees and being more thoughtful about the things that we need to change. Hybrid work is here to stay, whether you're in person a couple days a week, whether you're, completely remote. An element of hybrid work is more apparent than ever before. And I think people need to think differently about how they need to engage their employees in this new setting and keep them engaged and keep them productive in this new kind of way we work, which has changed dramatically in the last 5 years.
For sure it has. And that word intentional, that really resonates with me because we've long spoken about being intentional about culture when you're building culture. So it's kind of no different, isn't it? I think we just need to bring some of that discipline, as you're saying, into how we think about adjusting to how we're working today very, very differently. And like you said in describing your workforce at the outset, I mean, you've got people who are fully remote, who are just out there. A lot of your clinicians, I assume, are fully remote a lot of the
Correct.
time. And you've got the people in the office most of the time, and then you've got the hybrids. So it's a reality for most of us, some flavor of that, for sure.
For sure. And I think what's interesting is you can't follow the clickbait. It depends on the organization. Like,
Yeah.
just we are majority remote, but that works for us. We're virtual healthcare. We made the decision early on that if we were going to do virtual care well, we needed to do remote work and virtual work well. So I get that it's not a one size fits all, but people need to understand what is the best way to work with their employees to achieve their goals and not pay too much attention to what I think is the articles and the news and the calling people to work and letting people work from home. It's really what is the right thing for you, make a commitment to that and set the right expectation for your employees and, just work within those bounds.
I think that's a good, real kind of practical, impactful example. I used to say, from my consulting days, which I spent a good part of my career in, the question I get asked most often by clients is, what's the benchmark? What are others doing? We're all just curious about that instinctively, aren't we? And you can share that and it's interesting and we'll read the research and what, but at the end of the day, it comes down to exactly what you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just knowing who you are and then being honest with your employees about how you want to work. And then you'll
Yeah.
attract the employees that fit that mold.
Yeah.
But, trying to be something you're not, whether that's be a in-person, workforce when your employees want something else or vice versa, that's never going to work.
So let's kind of dive in a little bit more to kind of belonging, connectedness, recognizing it's changed dramatically in the last 5 years. I mean, how do you approach thinking about it and kind of solving for it as well? And we'll drill into that a little bit more shortly.
I think really early on was putting a stake in the ground and not trying to, follow anyone. We wanted to lead the way and make a determination early about what we were going to be and make a commitment to that. And we committed to, because of being a, virtual healthcare provider, we committed to virtual work. What we did do is we looked at the savings we would get, particularly with closing physical office space, which we did. We walked away from a number of different offices in a number of different states, but we didn't take that savings all the way down to the bottom line. Is we took a portion of that savings and put it towards T&E, travel and entertainment, and particularly putting it towards resource groups, employee resource groups, to give them additional funding to still create community, what we call community and connection. That was a real important conversation, was to not just look at the savings one would get through remote work, which I think people kind of jumped on that bandwagon in 21 and 2020, 2021, 2022, and looked at the real estate footprint and kind of thought, oh, they saw dollar signs in that. We did not look at it fully through that lens. And I think that was the thing that I would encourage all people to do, is to take a portion of that savings and still drive funding towards community and connection, which includes travel. I mean, we
Yeah.
do tell individuals here that while they have a remote role, they are expected to show up at certain in-person events. We encourage all teams to have at least one in-person event. And if you're a director at above and included health, you're really expected to come with your team or come with a group of leaders or perhaps a cross-functional team event once a quarter. And so it doesn't mean you are kind of sequestered into your, home office. It means that's the way you work, but there's a commitment to connect when appropriate, and when we can be intentional about it. Like we have in weeks at Included Health where our president runs very specific in weeks for specific teams that is published in a given month. And then based on that team, other people say, oh, well, if they're in week that month, then that's a good time for me to be in week that week as well. So not just kind of choosing your own adventure, but being very intentional about when we bring people together and how we curate and program those weeks is very important to us as well.
And I'd love to just hear some examples. You said the word, curate and program. It's done with intent, obviously. What are some of the kind of things that have really resonated with your teams?
Planning. So we set a quarterly schedule. We set an annual schedule. So specifically, we do what's called a business operations leadership team. We call BOLT leadership meeting once a quarter, and we publish those dates for the year. So everyone knows when those leadership meetings will take place and when they will take place and where they will take place. And that allows other teams to plan for those events. It also allows the internal comms team to plan all hands. So leaders are in person when we're doing all hands meetings, at least once a month we're together for those things. And it just allows for people to integrate their day-to-day work with these kind of key milestones where we know we're going to be bringing in kind of these connection and community pieces. We then host, employee happy hours and, different employee events during these moments as well. But you have to plan for these things. They just can't occur. You just can't put this on the paper, 30 days from now and expect everyone to kind of pivot and adjust. It actually creates a lot of work. So I think planning is the most important piece of it.
And I'm imagining and guessing, do you and your team play a big role, and maybe your comms team as well, I imagine, in curating those events? Yeah.
Absolutely. So, the people team, I own the kind of the leadership, the quarterly leadership team meetings. I own that program, and I very closely partner with our internal comms team on that. But it's a leadership responsibility for communication and connectedness. I want, my job is to kind of like set the budget, set the resources, provide the guidance. But every leader today, you talk about loneliness, every leader today has a role to play when it comes to community and connectedness. It can't just all be about these one moments in time when you get together. It can't be these transactional Zoom meetings. It's got to be more than that. And so I want to be careful that I don't say my team owns it. I think all leaders need to own how they operate in a remote world and how they are intentional in creating a space for belong. People need to still feel like they belong to a mission, to a commitment to an organization, that they are energized by the work every day. And that energy used to come by arriving to a physical space, and leaders need to figure out how to create that energy when someone's moving from their bedroom to a different space in their home, with, still in their slippers and elastic waistbands. And that's a really important thing for leaders to think about, how they're creating.
I'm not admitting to anything.
I won't tell you what kind of shorts I have on right now, right?
I know. We're all kind of dressing for here on up a lot of
Exactly.
That's for sure. No, that kind of really rings very true to me. And you touched on something there that I think about a lot when we think about this intentionality is, we know that sense of belonging and connectedness. It's got a real emotional aspect to it. It's not just transactional. And let's be honest, it is easier to build that relationship, to engender trust, or, those when we're in person. It just is. It's faster. It's not totally impossible to do it through different mediums, but you're right. It's we've had to, and I think, speaking honestly, we're still learning how to do this through different kinds of media and different kind of channels. There is no silver bullet, sadly.
I wish there was. There isn't, and I do think we're iterating in this kind of new way of working for sure.
Yeah,
We haven't figured it all out, but we didn't figure it all out in office either. Whereas
that is true.
so was it lunches and ping pong tables
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
all of those types of things. I mean, that we were iterating on that too, and this is just a different way of
yeah.
iterating on the workplace experience.
For sure. And I think you've kind of almost half answered the next question that was occurring to me is that, there's a debate, isn't there, about return to office, hybrid, remote, and all this kind of thing. And I think I go back to something you said. I think the answer that's right for you is the answer that's right for you. But do hybrid or remote models, do you think, inherently weaken that sense of belonging and connectedness? Or is it more about how we react, respond, and the kind of activities and programs that we implement to solve for them?
Yeah, I think if you commit to remote work, and that's one thing that I think we don't have to double down on here is people need to
Hmm.
commit to who they are. I think what frustrates employees today is it's changing on them. Their employees are saying they're a remote work, and then 1 year later they're saying they have to be back in the office a couple of days a week, and then 6 months later they're saying 5 days a week. And so you've just got to make a commitment to who you are and be clear to your employees, because that's just
Yeah.
like in any situation that's not fair to anyone. They have to plan their lives, they have to plan their commutes, those types of
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
I don't think remote work is inherently provides a disadvantage. However, it allows you to tap into a more diverse workforce by broadening your aperture about who you can recruit and who you can hire and what geographies you can go in. It provides you a ton of flexibility. So therefore, it inherently requires you, since you have a more diverse workforce to tap into, how are you adopting the appropriate practices to create belonging for a more diverse workforce, to create a sense of psychological safety for that diverse workforce. And so the two absolutely go hand in hand. Or if you do not do that, you're not taking full advantage of the opportunity that a remote workforce presents to yourself. And that to me is something that if you are committed to working remotely, you have to then be committed to how do you create a sense of belonging and how do you create a sense of psychological safety for people who are working in a variety of different circumstances, at different time zones, different locations, and different environments.
Yeah.
You were able to do that when it was a physical space. You could create this kind of tribe mentality
Hmm.
when you're all in this headquarters space. It's so much more difficult to do when you're dispersed. And so therefore, how you create belonging needs to be much more thoughtful and more strategic.
And so coming back to that, I mean, there's another dimension, that diversity that we all talk about a lot, we think about a lot as well as people leaders, which is the generational diversity in the workforce as another layer of complexity on all of that. And tell me first of all if you agree. This is Miriam's hypothesis on this, Jim. I think there is more that connects us just as human beings than divides us from a generational perspective.
Amen. Amen.
And I think our own intuition as humans bears that out, and I think the research bears that out. However, and I think we largely want the same things, but how we want to experience them, the way in which we consume them, I think there are some generational aspects to that. And you're nodding your head, so it sounds like you and it's the Miriam Jim hypothesis. We're in agreement on that. So bringing that into the workplace context, how do you think about that dimension of diversity as well, around building belonging and connectedness when we have that diversity of consumers out there? Their starting context and expectation often is different depending on which generation.
I do agree with you that I think most people want the same thing, and and when you look at data, they want the same thing from their employer, regardless of generation. And you have to ground yourself a lot. I laugh because are we that age where we're talking about the generations? Remember, I'm a strong, deep Gen Xer, and I remember when everyone complained about the Gen X generation in the workforce and how
Yeah,
different
yeah.
they
And
were
then
from
we
the
all
baby.
started complaining about the millennials.
Yeah, baby boomers were complaining about us.
Yeah.
I think it is absolutely grounding yourself in across all generations, what is important to your workforce, and you can see that through data. And I don't think there's a ton of division and debate across generations about what they want from their employer. I think we can create those stories. I think having an enemy always helps someone in some odd way, and I just don't agree with that. That finding a group of people, regardless of age, that are united by a set of values, that are united by a clear mission, allows a company to do enormously wonderful things. And it's just being true to that mission and those values and being clear on those things that allows you to unite a group of individuals regardless of their age, of their background. I don't, people are working longer, and there's a role for us to play in early careers, and how someone in their early career needs to evolve, particularly in a remote workforce. I think there's some disadvantages there that we need to pay attention to. And I think that there's learning on all those on both sides, from the baby boomers to the Gen Zs. And I think that both those generations are increasingly experiencing loneliness at home. And how do you help those to connect those dots? Employers can play a great role there.
They absolutely can. And, again, there's no single solution for this, but I think one thing I worry about a lot for the younger generations coming in is the learning experience, just how you learn from your colleagues, with your colleagues, how you learn the culture, how you learn to navigate the company. Not that it's impossible remotely or just with a 2-day a week in the office, but it's different.
Yeah.
And I think it's harder as well. I mean, how do you think about, what are some things you're doing maybe, or just experimenting with to help solve for those hurdles?
Well, first you have to think of orientation and onboarding as two distinct tasks, and separating the two. We divide those into two distinct tasks. Orientation is making sure the employee has the same orientation to the company, who you are, how you work, what your systems are, and you have to catch them within their first couple days on the job when it comes to orientation, and it has to be consistent. Onboarding is customized. And so one's onboarding, how they get connected to their team, how their team rolls up to the mission, how their team rolls up to the values, that needs to be owned by their leader. And we now are very intentional about putting a 90-day onboarding plan in place, particularly for managers who come into the organization. There's a great book, Your First 90 Days. So we kind of live by that book. We give that to a lot of people here. But separating the two is first really important. And being disciplined about orientation, and having a manager be disciplined about onboarding, and making sure they have connections, people are connecting in with them, that they know how to not just operate within their day-to-day, but what kind of social channels do they need to get connected with? Someone needs to get to know that person. Are they a dog person? Let's introduce them to the Pup Life Slack channel. Do they have children? Let's invite them into the kinship Slack channel. We do not over-engineer Slack here. We kind of have clear guidelines, but we allow that to also be a space for community. But you have to create the space for someone to at least divulge, this is who they are. This is how they this is their authentic self, so that they can then find their communities within the organization. That was much easier to do in a physical work environment. You now need to make sure you're curating that, and you create the space for people to do that within their first 90 days. Because they have to, and my CEO is very good at this. He's like, you've got to create someone's best friend at work. That was true for me. I started at Included Health in 2021, early 2021, right in the craziness of the pandemic and masking and vaccines and what were we going to do by bringing people back into work and all of those types of things. And it was just a lot of pressure on us as chief people officers at the time. And I thought, oh God, why did I go into healthcare during the pandemic, and why did I change jobs in the pandemic? I thought I would, and I'm over 50. What was I thinking? And it was a struggle for me. But my CEO was able to figure that out, and then go to a counterpart on my team, my chief operating officer, and be like, you need to be Jim's best friend. You need to bring him in closer, because we were all remote at the time, if you remember.
For sure.
Not because choice, but because we had no other way to work but remotely. And that was really smart. And that was a huge learning for me, as I was feeling uncertain in my day, that he had enough awareness of me and how I was feeling because of our one-on-ones, and I wasn't like overly vulnerable. I was still in my early kind of onboarding, that he could just sense it through our
Mm,
conversations. And he then was like, okay, we got to bring Jim closer into the executive team and
mm.
assigning that to someone. And now like she's like, my dearest colleague, and we
Best
rely
buddy.
on her, we rely on each other all the time. But how do you do that for everyone? How do you
Mm.
scale that? That's the stuff that we're talking about now. And that is really important. People need to have friendship at work. And, I think sometimes companies like shy away from that kind of personal connection. And I think it's a place for us to lean into, and you have to lean into in a virtual space.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. And I think, it's like a lot of these topics we talk about, this, debate, well, should we as companies be paying attention to this? I come back to, if you look at things like the Q12, one of the questions from Gallup in their Q12 is, I have a friend at work. If you even just have one person you at work that you consider a close friend, the research says you're about 3 times less likely to turn over. You're more
Totally.
likely to stay. Just that one friend.
Just that one
And
person. Hmm.
it's that's how important it is to us, and that's the reality of who we are as obviously just human beings as people. Community matters, connection matters to us hugely. Even when it's just that one strong connection, it makes me feel much better. I work better. I understand better. I learn better. There's just so much positivity that comes from that. That why wouldn't you? Which company doesn't want better performance, lower turnover, you know, higher engagement? No company on the planet would say, I don't want that.
Yeah, and it's such a shame because I do think we run away from some of this connectedness, some of this
Mm,
interpersonal connectedness. And I think remote work has allowed us to kind of shy away from this kind of interpersonal
mm,
dynamic, where it's harder to be more candid and direct and give feedback. I think in this day and age, too, you talk about like wanting to divide people. I think there is a struggle with just like dissonance, and like two things can be true at the same time and it still can be a difficult situation. Like we got to help
mm.
people through this, and the only way to do that is to create strong interpersonal connections with people that you work with. The only way you will work through conflict and debate and get
Mhm.
to the other side of a good, healthy, innovative decision is you first need to just have trust and connection to that person. It's just
Yeah,
fundamental. And
yeah.
it got to be, if you choose to be a remote workforce, you can't, well, you've got to be, we're coming back to being intentional. Like, how are you
Mhm.
doing that? It's not easy. It's not a one size fit all. I can't give you the answer on that, but you've got to do the work there for sure.
Before in our conversation, you mentioned the importance of psychological safety and that, ability to be, for people to just be their true, authentic self. I want to tread into that minefield a little bit that, there's a lot of debate around, around the topic of DEI. And I think to some degree, in some quarters, belonging, or at least inclusion and belonging, has become replacement language for DEI. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing as long as you're still focusing on the right things. My philosophy is call it what you like. I don't care about the label. I care more about the action and the outcome. How important do you think it is to, again, be intentional about the importance of DEI in that context of belonging?
Yeah, boy, I think it's really intentional and really important, and something you have to be intentional about.
Hmm.
Honestly, it makes me sad that it's a minefield.
It
Uh,
does, yeah.
and I
Mm,
understand from a political conversation or a social justice conversation how the debate has come about. But when it comes to work and it comes to developing teams and creating high performing teams, the data speaks for itself. A more diverse, inclusive team where people can be their authentic self and people can have candor and debate and give their point of view, those teams perform better, better outcomes, better retention, better profitability. The data is clear there. And so I'm sad that we have I say as chief people officers, some of us have kind of run away from the DEI conversation, because there's no way you can have a high performing team and not continue to have,
mhm,
a diverse, inclusive, you know, environment where people feel they have a sense of belonging and feel safe to kind of contribute
mhm,
and give their opinion. I think the mistake is exactly kind of what you said. That it was in many ways we weren't being strategic. We didn't do everything right there. Like,
mhm,
giving diversity up to one individual in the company and not making it an expectation of all leaders is not something that can be done. Just hiring individuals at a certain statistic or a certain percentage or a certain level and not really thinking about what their true authentic experience is at work and how they experience their work, you will not achieve what you need to achieve. And so I think we need to just take the learning and evolve from here, but certainly not run away from the DEIB conversation. And I agree with you. I don't care what we call it. I just think it's essential to high performance and it's essential to great outcomes. Like we know it to be true.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think at the end of the day, it is about, for me, it is about having that broadest, best talent pool, which can only come through diversity. And that performance piece can only come that, if I just hire for diversity, but I don't have the other things that follow, like a really strong sense of belonging and an inclusive environment, then the performance doesn't come. So,
and I think we were measuring the wrong things. And I say we, like I think we've iterated over the last 20 years. Like we made mistakes on how we approached the DEIB strategies. But in the end, it's measuring one's belonging. It is measuring one's psychological safety across teams, across different demographics. Like how is one's sense of belonging? You can measure these things. We do a lot of great work here now of like, understanding that across our workforce and then being able to understand where we're doing it well and where we've got our hot spots and we need to focus on. And it isn't about just recruiting or taking some performative action, when it's Gay Pride Month, that's not what belonging is. Those things, I don't want to discount those things, but that can't be your strategy.
And you mentioned a second ago that it's a multi-pronged strategy and approach to all of this, of course, but the importance of leaders in this, and we know, I think there's this complexity overload tsunami that I think the general workforce is feeling. We know our leaders are feeling it more and more heavily. So when we think about combating connectedness and having a really inclusive environment, a really strong sense of belonging, how do you think about that leadership support and enablement piece of that? Because we know to do it at scale and to have it be in part of your culture, the leadership role is so critical.
Yeah, and particularly we find that it's your junior leaders. We call them our M1, or our frontline managers and supervisors are the most caught in the middle and stressed out. And so you do have to develop different curriculum and different engagement actions with those leaders than you would at the higher executive director level. And so treating all leaders and managers in one way and one communication and one mechanism, that doesn't work. And so I think treating your leadership cohorts as distinct cohorts is really important to like creating the right support. And it comes back to investment. Like that is another area where when we decided to do remote work and we decided to see the cost efficiencies of remote work, we also needed to say, let's not take all of those costs to the bottom line. We actually had to take it over and put it in T&D and invest in leadership development, invest in management, like IH Learn and the tools to do remote learning, e-learning, the tools to also create forums. We do an annual leadership summit where we bring our leaders, our top 200 leaders together and get them realigned and resynced up to the mission, because those things used to happen naturally, but you've got to tether them together. It's investing in those things and not just thinking of remote work as a cost savings is really, really important.
Yeah, it's about rebalancing the investment. You might still take some saving to the bottom line, but
we still saw savings. We saw, I mean, like, look, those leases in those major cities those were cost cows for us. So we weren't in small geographic areas, and we needed to. So we did take a savings there. We just didn't take all the savings that we could.
Yeah. No, that's and it's a wise investment. I'm sure it's paid off for you. In terms of, as you look at a lot of the metrics, you're seeing better outcomes than you would have otherwise if you hadn't made those investments.
Absolutely. We're seeing over the last 3 years improvement. We measure to one's workplace experience remotely and what their experience is. And we've seen gains there that we didn't have in 2020 and 2021 when we first were kind of dealing with the tsunami of this kind of change that was happening.
So we can't get away with a conversation around these topics without talking a little bit at least about what is the role of technology in helping us solve for belonging and connectedness at scale, especially given everything we've talked about. How do you think about that, just as part of your people strategy in your organization?
I think it's absolutely important. Having strong technology support, making sure people have the technology tools right off the bat, they understand how to work within the technology that we've provided to them. I'll take the example of just, we are a Google shop, and so a lot of Google Docs, a lot of commentary, that when you transition, perhaps if you're a Microsoft company and you transition to included health, you need to like help pave that way of like what it's like to collaborate in a doc and like not assuming anything. It's making sure people are taking the full benefit of the technology that is available to them. So like when you do like a Zoom call or a Google Meet or anything like that, it's using big breakouts appropriately, using music. Like music tells someone who you are and like is an instant conversation starter, but like not just turning on the meeting like you would if you were just like people walking into a room in a physical space, but creating the right kind of environment for people. And there's ways to do all of those things through the technology that we have. I think people are not really maximizing some of the, proactively maximizing some of the tools in these forums. We try to like maximize those investments in a number of different ways.
I think that's one place where just that diversity of ideas can help you unlock some real good, innovative, creative solutions along the way. Because there's stuff that you and I might not think of, or our teams might not think of, that if you cast it out there, you'll end up. I'll give you an example. It came actually from the great brain of our fabulous internal comms leader, Carolyn Clark, whom you know, and we were revamping our town hall, our virtual town halls, and she came up with we call them the People Sync, PPL, because it's in our name, but we have the People Sync playlist, and every time we do one, a member of our team gets to pick the song, and they get featured, and it tells you, like you're saying, music tells something about your life and what you're into, and it's just a fun little snippet. But it's a great way to start a meeting, especially a bigger meeting, because you get energy and vibes, and then you get a lot of people going, "Oh, I didn't know Jim was into that."
Yeah, it creates this conversation. Totally.
Creates
Like we share the Spotify playlist. I mean, it's like these simple things that are so valuable because it creates the conversation that people want. We have people pick on their walk-on song. Like, what's your walk-on? We like walk-on songs.
Yeah.
So what's the music that plays when you're about to like start
What's your
a
walk-on song? Come on,
presentation?
Jim. What's yours?
So, I love Sam Smith. I
Okay.
feel love. I love the energy of a Sam Smith song
There you go.
when it's. What's going to be yours? What's yours?
Oh gosh, I'd have to think about that. I mean, if I went by music genre, it for me would have to be something like maybe Oasis or something like that.
Yeah,
Going back to my Britpop days, I was saying,
yeah.
like Wonderwall or something like that. Maybe I don't know.
It's a great question to ask someone because you have to
Yeah,
like it's gotta have to have the right energy and like it's a but those small things,
yeah, yeah,
except like to prevent from these kind of transactional
yes,
conversations or these transactional meetings, and like understanding different styles, like that
yeah.
presents a whole conveation. It's just
It does,
it's fun. Yeah,
and it's
food
like,
is another one.
yes,
We
yeah,
talk about food a lot here in our
yeah.
meetings as well. Yeah.
And I think the word of this conversation that's sticking with me, Jim, is intentionality, being intentional about every aspect of the conversation we've had, and it's the social element as well that you mentioned. I think you mentioned you have like a puppy channel, which I'm sure is probably one of the most viewed channels you have.
Yep, my favorite.
Yeah, and I think that there is a place for those things in the workplace, because we would have, when we were more of us were in the office, you would randomly, do those things more, more regularly, even if you didn't have a structure to them. So you have to kind of reinvent them somehow, because they still matter to us to connect on a human level.
Yeah, and the first thing is you just allow people to create it organically. Like I also think there's certain things that need to come from the employees themselves that are not from the office of Jim O'Gorman or from the HR department. I think people shy away
Yeah.
from those. We don't overly police Slack channels. There's like, if Slack channels age and there's no conversations, we want them to go away. And we have clear guidelines on when to create a channel and all those types of things. I think Slack is a really key tool. I used to have a love-hate relationship with Slack, and now I've just, like jumped full on into that community. And I think that helps in a remote world. I, for one, never thought I'd be a remote worker. I'm the cheap people. I love being in the office. It's like now, it's taken me a while to adjust. What about you?
Well, I have to say, but earlier in my career, back in the olden days, as my son would say, I was a remote worker pre-internet. Now think about that. Pre-internet, you're a remote worker. And because I was a salesperson, I had my region. I was on the road. I was a project engineer at one point. I was out there on construction sites. It was a whole different ball of wax because we didn't have this level of connectivity. And it seems bizarre when I think about it now. I'm thinking, well, how did I function? I mean, I still worked. I still, did my full week, but it was just different. It was just different. So to do it this way, for me, it felt very familiar because I've lived a life on the road a lot with my work. So I had a very nomadic existence. So that piece of it didn't feel too odd, I have to confess. But of course, how we interact is just light years different. And I would say much better. I mean, think about working remotely if you couldn't do this. That's how it used to be. For those of us who were working remotely back in the day, and many of us have worked remotely for long parts of our careers. So it was harder, actually, in that sense. A lot harder.
Yeah, and like you said, the technology makes it so much easier. I mean, think about you and I. We've never met face to face. We've had a
No.
number of different conversations. We've like really, really great conversations that led to this conversation
Yeah.
today, but we've never met face to face. But
No.
we've taken the time to like share docs, have the conversations, get to know each other. I think that's just making sure people like we create that for people. That's
Yeah.
we've got to just make sure people can feel comfortable doing
Yeah,
that.
absolutely, 100%. Well, I could literally take the rest of the afternoon continuing the conversation here, Jim, but time is against us. So, just in wrapping us up with the last question, if you had kind of a bottomless resource pit, but no budget constraints, what would be kind of a bold idea you just love to do that would boost belonging and connectedness in your world?
Oh, boost. Well, I think it's caregiving. I think it's all about like we are increasingly, blending our work with our personal life, particularly in remote work. And there's a huge role for caregiving. People are living longer. We're sandwiched in care. We're sandwiching people within raising their families and taking care of elder parents. I think if I had an unlimited budget, I think I would support that role of caregiving. How do you give the primary caregiver at home or the caregivers at home access to all the information they need to do that well? I think it presents a huge strain on people today. I've experienced that strain. I have employees. I always have some employee, one or two or multiple leaders in the same strain.
Yeah.
And I just don't think we do enough. We do stuff around healthcare and behavioral health, but I think the caregiver gets left behind.
Yeah. Okay, one of these days, hopefully,
One
we
of
will
these days.
be able
I
to
think
solve
there's
all
work
that.
we can do there soon,
Yeah.
actually. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's a good closing thought. So before we fully wrap this up, we let folks out there, if they would like to connect with you, you're a great connector. I know what kind of socials or ways could people connect with you best?
The best way is LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to increase my LinkedIn network at Jim O'Gorman on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with people there.
Same for me too. And I've taken, like I always do selfishly, I take some nuggets and ideas from these conversations. So everything from what we should be thinking about being more intentional about to what we allow to happen organically, there's a real nice balance to be struck, I think, between those two aspects, if you like, of everything we've discussed today. So thank you again, Jim. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, same. Thanks for the time.